Do one thing for me. Picture your last trip to Aldi, the car park, the trolley you had to feed a coin to unlock, the narrow aisles, where the goods sit in the cardboard boxes they arrived in, stacked straight onto bare metal shelving, the blue and orange sign, and that strange little thrill, at the till, when the total comes in far lower than you expected. You know this shop, so do your parents. It is one of the biggest grocers on the entire planet. Thousands upon thousands of stores across Germany, Britain, America, Australia, half of Europe. It is so ordinary, so woven into everyday life, that you have probably never once stopped to wonder who actually owns it. But here is one thing you almost certainly do not know. Aldi is one name, but it is not one company. It is two separate companies, owned by two brothers, who split one family clean in half, and then quietly carved up the whole world between them. And in America, one of those two brothers secretly owns a shop you would never, ever guess, a place called Trader Joe's. This whole empire began in a single tiny grocery, in a bombed-out German city. And it broke apart. Two brothers, two companies, 60 years of silence, reportedly over a single pack of cigarettes. This is World's Richest. And here, we tell not just how great things are built, but how they break. If this is your first time on the channel, subscribe. It is completely free. And today, the whole story of the two quietest billionaires the world has ever seen. Now, stop and go back to where it started. Not with the brothers, but with their mother. In 1913, a woman named Anna Albrecht opened a tiny grocery shop in a working-class suburb of the German city of Essen. It was nothing, a single room, flour, sugar, coffee, sold to the coal mining families of the Ruhr Valley. That was the whole business, and it might have stayed nothing forever if not for her two sons, Karl and Theo. Both boys were pulled into the Second World War. Both were sent to the front. Karl was wounded. Both were taken prisoner. And when they finally came home, in 1946, they came home to rubble. Essen had been bombed almost flat, and in that ruin, the two brothers took over their mother's little shop and had one idea, a cold, simple, brilliant idea. In a broken country where nobody had any money, they would sell food cheaper than anyone else alive. And to do it, they would strip away everything that cost money but was not food. No advertising. Ever. No fancy displays, no decoration, no wide range, just a few hundred products people actually needed every day. They would not even unpack the boxes. The goods would sit on the shelf in the cardboard cartons they were delivered in, ugly, bare, and unbeatably cheap. It was the opposite of everything a shop was supposed to be. No temptation, no frills, no games, just the lowest possible price on the things a family could not do without. And in a country where money was desperately scarce, that turned out to be the most powerful idea in retail. Within a couple of years, they had 4 stores, then more. They gave it a name, eventually, by simply gluing 2 words together: Albrecht, the family name, and Discount, the German word for discount. Aldi. And it worked, beyond anything they could have dreamed. A handful of shops became dozens. Dozens became hundreds. In a Germany clawing its way back from the war, the two brothers had built a machine for selling cheap, and they had built it side by side as partners for well over a decade, and they had built it together. And then, over something absurdly small, they stopped being together at all. Around the year 1960, the two brothers had a falling out, and the story that has followed them ever since, the one nobody can quite prove, but everybody tells, is that it came down to cigarettes. One brother, Theo, wanted to sell cigarettes at the checkout. The other, Karl, did not. Reportedly because he feared cigarettes would draw thieves and shoplifters into the stores. Now, be careful with this. Cigarettes are the trigger everyone repeats. But it was almost certainly never that simple. A decade of running a company together does not end over one product, and nobody outside the family knows the whole of it. But whatever the true weight of it, the brothers decided they could no longer run one company. So they did something almost unheard of. They cut the company in two. It did not happen in a single afternoon. The disagreement, the division, the paperwork all played out across a few years, around 1960 and 61. But when the dust settled, there were two Aldis. One half for the north of Germany, Aldi Nord, which Theo took. One half for the south, Aldi Süd, which went to Karl. Two separate companies, two separate fortunes, one family name, and by 1966, they were fully, legally, and financially apart. Two rivals, in theory, who happened to share a surname. And here is the strangest part. They did not go to war. They did the opposite. They drew an invisible line straight across Germany, a border that shoppers there still half-jokingly call the Aldi equator. And they agreed, quietly, never to compete with each other again. The north was Theo's, the south was Karl's, and neither brother would cross into the other's ground. And then they did the same thing to the entire world. As Aldi grew beyond Germany, the brothers split the planet between them, like two kings dividing a map. Karl's Southern Company took Britain and Ireland and Australia and the United States. Theo's Northern Company took France, the Netherlands, Spain, Belgium, Poland, and more. Which leads to one of the great hidden facts of the grocery world, because in America there are, in effect, two different Aldi empires, and most shoppers have no idea. The stores that actually say Aldi on the front all across the United States, those belong to Karl's South. But back in 1979, Theo's Northern Company quietly bought a small, quirky California grocery chain of its own, founded a decade earlier by a man named Joe Coulombe, and kept its name exactly as it was. That chain was Trader Joe's, the cult favorite. The Hawaiian shirt uniforms, the hand-drawn signs, the friendly crews, the strange and wonderful own-brand snacks that shoppers drive across cities to buy. Most of the millions of people who adore Trader Joe's have no idea it is German-owned at all, let alone that it belongs to one specific, secretive branch of one specific German family. To this day, Trader Joe's is owned by the Northern Albrechts, so the two brothers who split over a pack of cigarettes ended up facing each other, silently, across the same country, under two completely different names, pretending, in public, not to be related at all. One family, two empires. The whole world quietly carved up between them. And while the family drew its lines, the machine itself just kept growing. Through the 1970s and 80s and 90s, Aldi marched out of Germany and across the world, into Britain and America and Australia, and country after country across Europe. It never advertised its way in, it never won on flash. It simply arrived, opened its plain, boxy little stores, sold good enough food at prices no rival could match, and waited for the shoppers to come. And they came, in their millions. And they stayed, with a loyalty that looks less like shopping and more like belonging. People who could afford to shop anywhere chose Aldi, and felt clever for it. That was the quiet genius those two brothers had stumbled onto, in the rubble of a broken city. That cheap, done with absolute, relentless discipline, is not a weakness. It is a kind of religion. And the men themselves? They became something almost stranger than the business. Because Karl and Theo Albrecht turned into two of the richest human beings on Earth, and two of the most invisible. They gave no To this day, there are only a tiny handful of confirmed pictures of either man. For two of the wealthiest people who have ever lived, they left almost no face behind at all. For years, most Germans would not have recognized either brother if he had bagged their groceries himself. And they were famously, almost comically, frugal. Men worth billions who reportedly wrote on both sides of every sheet of paper and pinched every last cost, exactly as they had in the ruins of 1946. Karl, the southern brother, retreated behind a walled garden where he grew orchids and played golf on a private course that almost no one knew existed. They did not want yachts. They did not want fame. They wanted, it seems, to be left completely alone. And for the most part, they were. And that silence, That invisibility was shattered just once, in the most frightening way. In 1971, Theo Albrecht, the northern brother, was kidnapped. He was snatched and held for 17 days in a city in western Germany by two men, a career burglar and a disbarred, gambling-ruined lawyer. His family paid a ransom of 7 million German marks to get him back, said at the time to be the largest ransom ever paid in the country's history. As the story goes, the money was so sensitive that it was handed over by a bishop, acting as a go-between, though that detail belongs as much to legend as to fact. Only about half of the ransom was ever recovered. And then came the detail that tells you everything about how these men saw money. Because afterwards, Theo Albrecht reportedly tried to claim the ransom, the money paid to save his own life, as a tax-deductible business expense. Whether he ever succeeded is disputed to this day. But he tried. To a man like that, even his own kidnapping was, in the end, a line on a balance sheet. The brothers died within a few years of each other. Theo, the northern brother, in 2010, with a personal fortune estimated at around $17 billion. Karl, the southern one, in 2014, by then the richest man in all of Germany, worth somewhere in the region of 23 to 25 billion. And here we have to be careful with one number, because it is the number that headlines this whole story. The Albrecht family's fortune is often put at somewhere around $38–39 billion. But understand what that figure is. It is an estimate of the family's personal wealth, the money the people are worth. It is not the size of the company. And keep that separate from the other larger number, because the business the two brothers built, both halves together, now runs something like 13,000 stores around the world and takes in well over 100 billion euros in sales every single year. One of the biggest grocers on the face of the earth. Two magnitudes: the family's fortune and the company's scale. Do not let anyone glue them into one. But the feud was not finished, because there was a second war still to come. And this one was uglier than the first. It broke out inside the Northern Company, Theo's Aldi Nord, and Theo's Northern Company alone. Aldi Nord is controlled through a set of family foundations, a deliberately complicated structure, built to keep the fortune locked inside the bloodline. And after Theo died in 2010, and then his son Berthold died in 2012, that structure became a battlefield. On one side, Theo's surviving son Theo Jr. On the other, Berthold's widow, a woman named Babette Albrecht, and her children. The spark was a change made to the fine print of one of those family foundations by Berthold as he lay dying, a change that shrank his own branch's power. After his death, his widow went to court to overturn it, and the fight that followed spilled the famously private family straight onto the front pages. Because Babette's side of the family was accused, remember, not convicted, of betraying the clan's iron creed of thrift, of spending lavishly. German media reported allegations of something like 100 million euros poured into art and vintage cars, and a grand lifestyle that the austere old brothers would have found obscene. One newspaper nicknamed her the Merry Widow. At one point, one of her own sons filed a legal complaint alleging that tens of millions of euros had been pulled improperly from the family's trust. Now, every single bit of that is an allegation. These are living people. Nothing was ever proven in the way a court proves a crime, and the family has denied the claims. The old matriarch, Theo's widow, even used her will from beyond the grave to try to push Babette's branch out of the company entirely, invoking the family's sacred rule of modest living. It ran through the German courts for more than a decade. And then, in January of 2023, it finally ended. Not with a verdict, but with a peace deal. The heirs agreed to reorganize the Northern Company under a single new holding, shared between the two branches, quietly closing one of the longest family feuds in German history, with no admission by anyone of any wrongdoing. And through all of it, the southern side, Karl's heirs, stayed united and silent and out of the papers entirely. Karl's two children quietly held the southern empire together, exactly as their father would have wanted, while their northern cousins tore at one another in open court for years. Two families, one name, only one of them at war. So where does it all stand now? Two separate companies, still, 13,000 stores, 100 billion euros and more in sales every single year. The little discount idea, born in the rubble of Essen, is now reshaping how the whole world shops. In fact, there is a name for it in the grocery trade, the Aldi effect. Because when an Aldi opens in a town, the big established supermarkets nearby are forced over and over again to cut their own prices just to keep their customers from walking out the door. Two silent German brothers selling out of cardboard boxes ended up rewriting the rules of retail for everyone. And here is the quiet twist at the end. Because after more than 60 years of that invisible line drawn across Germany, the two halves have slowly, cautiously begun to drift back toward each other. They have started buying much of their stock together. They have begun sharing some of the same own-brand products. They have even cut prices at times in step. And in recent years, there have been reports, not confirmation, of quiet, exploratory talks about whether the two Aldis might, one day, simply become one company again. Think about what that would mean. The family that tore itself in two over a pack of cigarettes 60 years ago, slowly finding its way back to being whole. Because that is the real lesson buried in an Aldi carrier bag. This was not built by geniuses with degrees or investors or a grand plan. It was built by two silent brothers in a broken country who decided that the cheapest honest shop would beat the fanciest one, and who then held to that with an almost frightening discipline for the rest of their lives. No advertising, no decoration, goods sold straight from the box. And from that, one of the largest private fortunes on the planet. It is one of the strangest rags to riches stories of the modern age, and almost no one, anywhere, can name the two men at the heart of it, which, in the end, is exactly how they wanted it. So the next time you are standing in one of those narrow aisles, pulling a tin out of a cardboard tray, look around for a second, because you are standing inside an argument. An empire built by two brothers who agreed on almost everything except one small thing at a checkout counter. Who split a family, and split a company, and split the entire world between them, and then never spoke of it again, and whose children are only now, after all these years, beginning to wonder whether the two halves might finally come back together. That is what World's Richest is for. Not just the building, but the breaking, and, sometimes, the mending. If tonight's story made you stop and think, then subscribe, and send it to someone who shops at Aldi, and ask them if they knew there were two. We will see you with another one very soon.